Hello, I'm Nobby Clark. Welcome to my workshop. Today I'm starting another project for the Myford lathe. When I bought the lathe, it came with two Pratt Bernard chucks, which I think one's made for the Myford lathe. One is a 4-inch 3-jaw scroll chuck, and the other is a much larger, I think 6-inch 4-jaw independent chuck. And when I used these for quite a long time, and they covered all the various jobs that I wanted to do. I did later on add to this another chuck, a 4-jaw independent chuck. This was a TOS chuck made in Czechoslovakia. I bought this second hand on eBay. It only came with the standard jaws. It didn't have any outside jaws for it, but this wasn't a problem. The jaw opening on this would cover all the various jobs I needed to do. I also have a Chinese mini lathe. This also has 2 chucks with it, and I bought for the Chinese mini lathe quite some time back an ER32 collet chuck, and this came already with the correct register for the Chinese mini lathe, which is 72mm register. But I thought it would be rather nice to be able to use this also on the Myford lathe as well. So I purchased a chuck back plate, which was advertised as having a 72mm register on the back already. So well, that's very easy. I can just buy the back plate and fit the collet chuck directly to it. The only problem was that who had ever machined the register on the back of this on the front of this back plate hadn't done it very well, and the collet chuck wouldn't fit onto the register. The register hadn't been cut very accurately, but not a big problem. A fairly quick job on the Myford lathe, just to mount the back plate straight onto the spindle and machine the face of the back plate to fit the collet chuck, no problem at all. I also had another chuck which I bought quite some time back. I bought something from a gentleman up in the Midlands, and when I had to collect it, and when I went up there to collect it from him, I was having a chat to him. He was obviously selling off quite a lot of bits and pieces out of his garage workshop, and he said, would this chuck be of any interest to you? I said, well possibly. And he sold it to me very cheaply. I think I only paid about £17 or £18 for it, but it's actually a bison chuck. I mean, I understand bison chucks are very well made and very accurate chucks. I had no immediate use for it, so I just put it to one side, or at some point I'll find a use for it. Again, like the TOS chuck, this is a 3-jaw, but doesn't have the outside jaws with it. And I thought, well, this might be a useful addition to use on the Myford as well. So that, well, rather than buy another back plate, I mean, the back plates for chucks like this one are actually quite expensive. I had a spare catch plate or drive plate, and I know that people have used these before on the Myford and on Boxford lathes as well, to mount chucks onto, just to sort of repurpose them. So I machined, faced this one off and machined it to take the register of this chuck, and there you see I drilled it to take some fixing screws as well. It worked out really well. It came out perfectly, very little run out, very accurate, and I thought this is going to be very useful if I need to machine something where I've already got something mounted in the Myford chuck, I could just take that chuck off with the workpiece in it and then replace it with this. So it's a useful standby item as well. And it just occurred to me the other day that it would be quite handy also to be able to use the chucks from my Chinese mini lathe on the Myford as well. When I could take the collet chuck off this back plate and use that, but this is drilled specifically for it with 3 fixing studs, where the Chinese mini lathe generally goes on with 4 studs. When I bought the Chinese mini lathe, that only came with a 3-jaw chuck, scroll chuck. It didn't have any outside jaws either. There seems to be a bit of a theme here, but I managed to get hold of some outside jaws for that, so that is a complete chuck now. And then after I'd had the lathe for I think about a year, I bought a 4-jaw independent chuck which has the correct register already, 72mm for the Chinese mini lathe, and the correct hole pattern on it to go onto the mounting plate. So that I'd need to make up another back plate for it, and I found on eBay just recently another catch plate. This was being sold very, very cheaply because it didn't have the pin with it, which normally connects to the lathe dog. So that's obviously why they were selling it off a bit cheaper. So I thought, well, this is going to be the project, to machine this, face it off, and machine the register for the 2 chucks that I've got for the Chinese mini lathe, so this can be swapped round as well. So it's now a matter of just sort of mounting this onto the Myford lathe and do a bit of machining on it. So bear with me just a moment and we'll switch the camera around and have a look at it going on. I had already removed the chuck from the Myford, and I put my spindle protector onto here so that there's no danger of damaging the threads on the spindle. And always, if you're doing any chuck removal or replacement, put a wooden plate on the ways so that if you slip and drop the chuck, you're not going to dent the ways of the lathe. Also, if you were doing an operation of machining and it was material that's sort of perhaps difficult to part off, you could actually use a hacksaw to cut through the part. If you do this, make sure also that you put some protection over the ways of the lathe so you don't damage it. The good thing about this lathe, this is a Myford ML7R. This is very similar in many respects to the Super 7, and the later Myford lathes actually have a spindle lock. If you turn this around, you see that spins, which would make it almost impossible to get the chuck or even the protector off. So you can't see it here, but on the opposite side of the headstock, there's a little lever that you can push against the pulley wheels, and then revolve that round, and that will lock into the pulley wheel, and you can then easily take the chuck, or in this case the spindle protector, off, and then that can be replaced with this catch plate. We can pop that on and then firmly lock that in place and then release the lock, so that will revolve now quite happily. So we can take this block of wood out as well, and I've put a tool in the tool post already. Because with the ML7R has a slightly shorter cross slide than the Super 7, when you're machining anything large, you've got to obviously make sure that there is enough travel for the lathe tool to cover the whole of the length of the cut. So bringing that in just to make sure that I have enough travel to cover right across here to face the surface here. Once that's been faced, obviously I'm then cutting a 72mm step register, so I'm only going to be machining this little portion out here, so that is not going to be a problem then. Now, if you've ever worked with cast iron, I'm sure you know what a horrible, messy stuff it is. It's not a metal that cuts in a sort of stringy fashion like steel. It comes off in a sort of a powder form, and you can see how dirty it is. What I've done off camera basically is that I've just faced off the catch plate here to make sure I've got a nice surface to it. Had to be pretty creative in setting up the top slide and cross slide here to be able to cover that distance easily, but more difficult in fact to now start cutting for the recess for the chuck, to get the tip of the tool fairly square so that I can end up with a nice square shoulder in here. And I've had to twist the top slide round so that I can bring the tool post as far back as required. And what I did, I marked, as you can see here with the Sharpie, I've marked a circle here much larger than the 72mm diameter that's required, because I found this is something you really need to sort of creep up on basically. So I'm going to machine it just to give me it only needs a sort of a fairly small register here, so I'm going to sort of just machine this in to this line here, and then gradually creep up on the final measurement. When I get very close to it, then I can sort of test fit the chuck to make sure I've got a good fit. Doesn't need to be a really tight fit. I mean, ideally a nice slip fit would be perfect actually, so that you have got some small movement on the chuck to make sure you can centre it all so that you can minimise the amount of run out on it. But anyway, I'll do a couple of cuts just to show you. I won't keep you on camera for this whole operation because it's going to be a fairly slow process, and obviously I'm going to need to concentrate very carefully to make sure that when I start machining into the 72mm diameter that I don't overshoot that too much. I don't want a sort of a really loose fit, because that's going to make it very, very difficult to then mark the plate out for the screw hole positions for the studs. But anyway, I'll make a couple of passes in here for you on camera. I've made a couple of cuts there, just you can see, and you can see how it showers the cast iron everywhere. Although you get a nice finish with cast iron, it's a real horrible material to work with. It just literally goes everywhere, and you get it all over your fingers. It's sort of rather difficult to wash it off afterwards. Anyway, what I'll do is I'll bring you back when I get sort of near to the finish point and some of the test fitting. I machine down to the register off camera because I really wanted to concentrate on cutting this as accurately as I could, and I had to make lots and lots of very shallow cuts on it to get it to a good fit, and I've also if you can see it, machined into here a bit of an undercut as well to make sure that the chuck will seat nicely in here. The chuck itself does have a sort of a machined edge on here anyway. It's slightly rounded, so I guess it is going to seat in really nicely, but I've got a really nice fit with that, a nice sort of slip-on fit, and I can't really feel any movement there at all, although you can see it revolves quite happily. So I think once I've got the holes drilled in the back and the fixing screws on, that there would be a tiny amount of room to sort of knock it into position if required. What I want to do now is just break this very sharp edge here and the sharp edge here as well. The back here has got a nice chamfer on it anyway, but as the you can see, the plate is actually wider than the chuck body. These chucks are 100mm chucks, 4 inches. This is slightly wide. I'm not going to machine this down. I'll just leave this as it is basically. I don't think that's any problem at all, but obviously it does expose quite a sharp edge here, and as I'm only going to be fitting chucks to this as required, this will be just sort of left like this, so I can fit on whichever chuck I need at the time. Although I think mostly it will be the 4-jaw chuck, because I think in the past when I've used the Myford 4-jaw chuck, sometimes to me it just seems, you know, unnecessarily large for some of the very small items I'm machining in it. So having a smaller 4-jaw independent chuck, I think is going to be quite useful in the future. I did this is actually the following day from the previous sequences. I wanted to sort of to come back to this fresh in the morning when I'm wide awake, but I did give the lathe a very gentle sort of brush over. But when I finish this, the next job's going to be to give the lathe an absolute thorough clean, to get all this horrible cast iron dust off it, give it a real good clean up, wash down, and then sort of lubricating everything on it. But the next job's going to be just sort of breaking all these sharp edges here on this part here and the outer edge. I think the tool I've got is going to give me a reasonably enough angle for that. Let's see how this works. just given that edge there a very light chamfer, but a much deeper chamfer on the outside edge here to almost match the one on the back. So that really is as far as lathe work is that finished now. Just got to remove this from the spindle. Let's see if it's going to come off. I'll revolve that round and get the spindle lock in. Let's see if I can actually get, yes, oh, I managed to do it. So we'll just wind that off very carefully. And that's it, job complete. And it's got quite nice finishes as well. I'm sort of quite happy with how that came out. So next job will be marking out the positions for the 4 holes. These basically just going to be clearance holes for the 8mm studs that are on the back of the chuck. But we'll discuss how I'm going to do that in the next sequence. I bet you knew straight away what I was making there. The next thing I've got to do is mount the back plate onto the back of the chuck. With this chuck, they're fitted to the Chinese mini lathe with 4 studs which go through a plate on the spindle of the lathe, and they're held in place by little nuts that go on the back. So I've got to do the same here with the back plate, but of course the problem I've got is that I've got to position the holes accurately on the back plate itself to drill the clearance holes. One thought was that I could find out what the pitch circle diameter of these screws are, and then use the DRO on the mill to drill them out on this, but this is all quite new to me, and I'm not that confident I will be able to do this very well. So what I did when I made the back plate for the Bison chuck, I used transfer screws. I had to make my own. I only needed to make 3 of them because there were only 3 hole positions on the back of the chuck. I mean, you can buy these. I think the main company making these in America, I think the name is Heinemann. I'd looked on eBay and there doesn't seem to be any supplier of these in the UK. Plenty of people selling them from America, but they are, for what they are, they're colossally expensive, and of course whatever you pay for them you're going to be paying almost the same amount again in postage. I think that's what I did before, was check the availability of them. So I decided for the Bison chuck to make my own. They were not difficult things to make, and I tried to copy the design of the American made ones. I mean, I suppose it's possible that they are available from a manufacturer in the UK. I just don't know, but if they're anything like the American ones, they're going to be out of my pocket to be able to buy them, and of course they're not difficult to make. When I was sort of thinking about the job here, I thought, oh great, all I've got to do is to make 1 more of these for this set, for this back plate. But of course when I dug them out of my stock, of course I discovered that these are, I think, 5 or 6 millimetre, and of course the threads on the back here are 8 millimetre. So I've had to make 4 of them, and that's what you saw in the previous segment. There is me machining these up. I just found a piece of studding. It was actually a piece of studding out of one of my hold down sets, and I just cut it into 4 pieces to make these, and you saw me file a point on the end and then file 2 flats, 1 on each side, so that when they're inserted into the back of the chuck, they've got to be screwed down so that only a little bit of the point sticks up proud of the back plate. Reason being there is that of course you've got to register this on the chuck with enough space to then tack them down onto the points of the little screws themselves. So the little flats on here will enable you to put a pair of pointed pliers into here to unscrew them out again. So that will be the next stage. It's getting sort of quite late in the day now, so I'm gonna perhaps do this if I can get into the workshop tomorrow. I mean, I don't want to do it this late in the evening really. feeling a bit tired now, so I want to do this when I'm feeling really fresh and that I hopefully won't make any mistakes. I've got to be careful when I do this. Obviously you've got 4 positions here, is to arrange the holes in relation to these parts of the what is now the back plate. So I'm going to have to sort of put this on here and move it around so that the clearance holes come out in ideal positions to be able to put little nuts on the back here. And so I'll sort of mark all this out, and what I did when I did this before was or what I'll have to do for both of the chucks is to put witness marks on the back plate and somewhere on the chuck itself. There may actually be a witness mark somewhere on here already from when I was using it on the Chinese mini lathe. As this is off the Chinese mini lathe, I decided to machine all of these on that lathe as well, give that lathe a bit of an outing. It hasn't been used for a little while. To make sure that the threads are okay on here, I've run them through one of these flange nuts a few times just to make sure that there's no damage to the threads at all. So I could just sort of run these through the nuts and make sure they go through very smoothly, because obviously I don't want these to get stuck in any of the holes on the back of the chuck here. If I do, I'll never get them out again, so I've got to make sure that the threads are absolutely perfect. It's a bit difficult to grip these, they are so small, but they all go through quite nicely, so there shouldn't be a problem. So what I'll do is I'll bring you back when I'm ready to mark these the plate out. To drill them, when I drilled the previous one I actually drilled it on the bench drill here, but I'm going to do this on the milling machine to make sure I get the positions perfect. So what I'll do is probably mount this on the bed of the mill, lock it down through the centre here, and then I can revolve this around to get all the different positions. As I say, it would have been so much easier to have done it using the DRO, but if I make a mistake, then I've sort of ruined the back plate then. So I think this is possibly for me the best way of getting the perfect position for each of the holes. I'm going to do as what I usually do is do a test drilling to get the correct clearance for the studs, and possibly use a drill just a fraction larger, perhaps a tenth larger than the actual size. But what I don't want to do is for this to sort of go on in position and bind up in any way. All these things keep rolling away. I've already lost one of the nuts already. I don't know where that's gone. That's fallen on the floor somewhere. Never find that again. Anyway, so I'll bring you back for the next part of this. The next job's going to be marking out the hole positions here on the back plate. And as I mentioned, I want to try and arrange it so that the holes come in these positions here if I possibly can, avoiding these sort of raised parts. So what I've done is on the chuck itself, I've just put a mark here between these two screw holes, so that when I put the back plate on, I can line that up so that that line comes in this slot here. I've already put the transfer screws in here, the 4 of them, and adjusted them for height with some sort of needle nose pliers, and kept adjusting them so that I can get them as near to the same height as possible on each one. And what I did was just put the back plate on, just to sort of get the minimal amount of movement, so hopefully I'll catch each of those four, transfer screw points. I can confirm that these are very sharp. So let's see how we get on. Obviously this is a rather a nerve-wracking part of it, and I'm going to use a big mallet to sort of try and hit this sort of squarely in the centre here. Once I've marked those positions out, then I can use a centre punch to enlarge the holes themselves. So anyway, let's see how we get on. It's worked. You probably won't be able to see this, but I've clearly got all four positions marked here. Now I can set this up to enlarge those with a centre punch, although that they actually look quite reasonable anyway, but I will just go around and punch each one of those again. And I can then use the needle nose pliers to remove all of these. I can do that later. I can use my nice little anvil here to mark each of those positions out. So they're marked out nice and clearly. So now the next job will be setting this up on the milling machine, and then lining up each hole in turn and drilling those through for the clearance for the studs. Looking at the positions there, it does look as though I'll clear these two raised sections at the back here, so that the holes will come through it in these positions here, and there'll be sort of plenty of room here for the locking nuts at the back. Anyway, join me in a minute at the milling machine once I get this set up for drilling. I've got the back plate set up now on the milling machine. I've put a stud with a T-nut into the centre slot of the milling machine table, and I'm just using a toe clamp to hold this down in place. I've locked it down firmly in position, and I put a centre point in the chuck here so that I can align the punch mark in the back plate nice and accurately, so I can guide the drill into position. I've already drilled one hole just to sort of make sure everything's working fine and everything seemed to be okay. I've just put some kitchen towel on the mill here, just to catch some of the chips from this, so that too much doesn't go into all the slots on the milling table anyway. Generally when you're drilling into cast iron, it's a little bit more crumbly than it is when you're doing it on the lathe, so it's not producing, fortunately, too much dust. But I'll take that centre point out and put a centre drill. I'm using a sort of decent sized centre drill for this. So if my hands are right in front of the camera lens there. We'll just go into this with a centre drill. I'm going to drill it with a 5mm drill first before I drill the 8mm hole. Will sort of hopefully guide the drill through nicely. Not a very deep hole, so it's going through quickly. I'm only going to show drilling one hole. I think once you've seen one hole drilled, that's going to be enough. Narrowing with the 8mm drill. Bit of a nice clean cut with this. This is a brand new drill. Drill out so I don't stab myself with this one as well. There we are. So that's the second hole. So all I've got to do now is slacken off that and move that around to the next position and line that up with the T-slots. Lock that down, and now I'm ready for the next one. But I won't bore you with drilling the other holes. I'll bring you back once they're all done and we do a test fit onto the drill, onto the lathe chuck. Well, that appears to have been a success, I'm glad to report. The holes all line up really well. they are, you know, quite a close fit round all the studs here, but obviously, you know, once it's on and in position, that's fine. The test obviously is to hold this up to a light source to make sure there's no gap anywhere around here, that it's all fitting, you know, perfectly against the back of the chuck. The only slight, well, not a problem, the only problem I'm going to have is that these holes are obviously, with this one, very, very near to this edge here. So the nuts that I would normally use to hold this on, there's not enough clearance for them. So I'm just going to have to arrange to have some washers below just to make up the difference. I mean, previously I'd used these spring washers, so I guess I could still use those, and I did use brass washers on. So what I can probably do is use the brass washers and just file off a bit of one edge so that they fit down inside here, so that it actually won't need much. Actually, I think they probably would actually fit, so that I can get the locking nuts down firmly in position. I think actually it's going to work actually. Yeah, I think that's going to be okay, so that will hold them on sort of nicely in position. So I think we can call this little project complete now. What I'm going to do later is just put this on the Myford lathe and just clock this in, just to make sure everything is nice and in the square and sort of running true. I'm sure it's going to be okay, and as I'm going to be using it, I guess mostly with the forge or independent chuck, if this is just a little bit out, that's really not going to make you know, such a huge difference really. But anyway, quite pleased with the outcome of that really. It was quite fun to do, and I'm pleased that you joined me for this adventure. The drills I used on the milling machine, they're these very inexpensive Parkside drills. These come from Lidl, and I only bought these about a week ago. So the 5mm and I had actually used the 5mm drill before. The 8mm drill I hadn't used for anything before, so it was a brand new drill. And considering the price of these, this is a set of drills going from 1.5mm up to 8mm, are about £3.50 a set. Extremely good value. I mean, I've used these drills quite a lot, and they are very, very good drills really for the price. So for this exercise, that they worked out fine. Anyway, as I say, thanks for joining me in the workshop. There's quite a lot of it's going to be quite a long video, I'm afraid, but there's lots of different lathe work and milling machine work that you can look at there. So there we are. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again also to all the subscribers to the channel, and to the very, very nice comments I've been getting just recently, and making contact with lots of new people on YouTube. Anyway, hope to have another project, lots of projects lined up. Hope to have another video for you very, very soon. So bye bye for now.